The topic of this presentation is RI calibration in NIST26 chromatogram and applying to calculating the RI in samples. It includes both a video and a handout. There's a lot of information that I put in this presentation, and a lot of it will be in the handout that will not be present in the video. On my website, you can see the full course on NIST26 with the newly integrated deconvolution library searching for both EIGCMS and LCMS-MS. There's a good bit of information in here, including the importance of the NIST RI and their approach, a more detailed approach for standalone AMDAS, my approach for the NIST26 integrated AMDAS, and a NIST 10-step approach for the integrated AMDAS. Also, at the end, there's some purchasing information on the hydrocarbon calibration mixture. I will only discuss the three top topics in detail, but many more details are included in the handout only. Retention indices provide an orthogonal dimension of identification alongside mass spectra, significantly improving confidence, especially for isomeric compounds that produce similar EI spectra. Over recent library releases, NIST has made a major investment in RI data. Experimental RI values are now measured for essentially all newly added compounds, and these RI values are carefully curated and incorporated into the NIST EI library. Where experimental data are not available, RI values are estimated using predictive models. This combined approach enables both measured and predicted retention behavior to be used during compound identification. Integrated RI matching within their search software allows filtering and ranking based on RI data. This helps quickly eliminate incorrect isomer candidates. Previously created a standalone AMDAS RI training. It included the video, associated handout, test files, and many additional resources. So it still might be useful if you want to have a more in-depth understanding of the process. The simpler process for integrated AMDAS approach will be presented in this presentation. But if you want to see the previous information for the standalone AMDAS, click this link to access the web page on my website. Here's my approach for RI calibration in the Chromatogram window using files that you can find on my website. So let's go to the actual program instead of doing it off the slide here, and we'll demonstrate it. So we'll go to File, Analyze EI Input File. We'll go and say Generate the RI calibration file. And we're going to put it in this folder. This is where I actually have my sample that I want to calculate the RI for. So it needs to be in the same folder that the sample is. And this is actually where the hydrocarbon mixture is too. So it's all in the same folder. So we'll open the calibration mix and we'll run it. Okay. I'm going to overwrite the current one there just for demonstration. And it's created it. So if we go back to the PowerPoint here, we can see that we generated it like we said. It creates a calibration file and returns the location and name. You can see it here. And you need to keep it in that folder that contains the data file of interest. So you need to use Notepad to view the cal file that I created. And we said where it was found. If you go to the bottom here, you'll see that it's missing the 39 and 40 hydrocarbon, the 3900 RI and the 4000 RI for the C39 and C40 hydrocarbon. So you need to find those retention times for these peaks and add them to the calibration file manually. And these peaks added will vary with calibration file obtained, so it depends on how the file was obtained, which ones you might miss. The reason it has trouble with this is because longer chain hydrocarbons have no molecular ion in many cases, and the instrument spectrum either in the instrument spectrum or the library spectrum. So it really can't library search and decide which one's which. So we'll have to go in and manually add these. So here's my approach to determine the retention time of the missing standards. You run the calibration file obtained versus the original file, and you can expand it to find the low boilers. And I think I'll just go through this in the software again. So we'll go And we'll go up here and say File, Analyze the EI input file. This time we'll put in, again, the Analyze with an RI calibration file, and we'll select our hydrocarbon mix, C7 through C40, and we'll open it. And then we'll run it against the calibration we just created, this JL RI website cal, and we'll open it. And now we'll say OK. And it's going to go through and compare our original file to its calibration to make sure that everything looks reasonable. And we know we're missing the C39 and 40, so that's our goal, is really to find the retention time for that. So I'm going to left click and drag here. This is the C8. The C7 is actually buried under some of the solvent at the front, so we didn't bother trying to calibrate there. So we expanded it now so that we have only the C8 through the C40. And you can see all of them here. What you can do is, I've used this max to med. It's somewhat a filter. It talks about it in the handout if you want to understand a little bit more about it, but essentially it's just a filter. So if you put it at 50, you can see I filtered out the peaks that I need to know the retention time, the C39 and the C40. So we can't use that. So we'll go back one step to the C20. Now we can see this out here and got rid of a lot of the small peaks. The other thing that you'll notice, if you had this turned on none, you'll see that this double marking some peaks. And when you turn it on all, it only takes the top of one of the peaks. So it doesn't repeat that peak over and over again. So we'll put it on all. And now we have all our peaks that we need. You can kind of step through them with the arrow on your keypad and just look at them. So there's the C8. 9, 10, 11, 12. You can just keep going all the way to the bottom. This is a little peak at the 1971, 2000, 2100, 20. And you go all the way down till you get to the last peaks of interest. And that's the peak we need to know the retention time for. And that's the other peak we need to know the retention time for. So if you look over here, you need to write these down, the retention time for those two peaks. But all the rest of them look good. So now we need to take those values, I just cut and pasted here to show you what they were, and manually edit the calibration standard, adding the RI and retention time. So I'll go in and show you that. Well, we probably won't. We'll just do it here because I don't want to have to go through all the files and take up all the time. But essentially, you open the cal file in Notepad, in this case, the JLRI website.cal, and we're going to enter the retention times in the first column for the C39 and 40. We add the RI index 3900 and 4000. So you see at the bottom, I added 3900 and 4000. And then I added the retention times here that we copied from the file we did. A couple caveats here. That it must be exactly one space between these two columns, exactly one space. And you really don't need any information in columns 3 and 4. And then you can save it, or I saved it with a different file name instead of the original file name, just so I'd keep the original. And you can see if you needed to calibrate or look for something that had a shorter retention time, you wouldn't necessarily need to add these. You just need to bracket the compound of interest that you want to do by at least 2 of the calibrations. So if you needed something that came between 19 and 20, you don't need the 39 and 40 to do your work. So let's demonstrate that it worked. Now let's go back to the software once again, and we'll go up and say File, Analyze EI file. This time we'll get my corrected file. I just fixed it. I left the original and open it, and OK. It'll go back and we'll see if it looks good this time. Okay, I'm going to click and drag just to get the peaks that I want. And I'm going to leave the max to med at 20. You can see if you go much higher, you start to cut out the peaks that we need to check. So 20 is a good value that gets rid of the little peaks, the majority of them in that. And we need to leave merge duplicate ID on all. If you put it on none, so you get multiple peaks. So you need to just put it on all to evaluate what it looks like. And now we got what we want. And you can see now If you look down, we have pretty much it's just a continuous step going from 100 up for each, going from 8 to 900, etc. The only exceptions will be these little peaks in between that they actually calculate the retention index for them. But you can see now that this is our 4,000, just like it should be, and this is our 3,900, like it should be. So now we have a good calibration that we can run our file against. So let's go run our file now. So we'll go back to the software up here, File, Analyze EI file. And I'm going to go get the one that I want to measure. I want to measure this compound here. So I'll open it and say Open, and then I'll come down. I think the calibration file will be the same. I still want to use that fixed calibration and say OK. And now you see the peak. It did the library search. I've got it on a max to med 20, a max to med of 20 instead of, I could go to a lower value and get a little peak, but that one gets the major peak. So I'll put it on 50. I don't think it'll matter all or none here. It's only one peak, so that's well behaved. So now if you click on it, you can see in the bottom, it has a retention index of 1765, score of 993. You can look at the butterfly plot. That looks really good for the desired compound. So it's a very good fit. It's only a difference of -1. And so it was actually in the main lib for this compound. So it reproduced really well. So let's go back to the presentation now. That's what I just did. I showed you how to check to make sure that everything looks good, and it did. We went in and we did the calibration against a compound to determine its RI from our calibration, and that looked good, and it found it in the library where it had been previously put in the NIST library. And that's pretty much the whole process, my process. Now, if you wanted to do the NIST 10-step process, it shows you how to get to it here, and I won't go through that, but it's just another approach. See which one you like the best. Mine's real simple, so I like my approach, but theirs is very good also. And we'll step through those. And the only last thing that's with this, I put into ChatGPT suggestions for purchasing the test mix, and it gave me some advice on who to buy it from and which ones you might want. So I hope you find this useful in your work. As I said, you don't really need to do the high ones if you're trying to do low molecular weight things and do their RI, as long as you bracket what you're interested in by at least 2 standards, and usually all the ones below it, just so it gets a good extrapolation for it. So I hope you find this useful, and good day.